welcome to the channel. I'm back to break down this 9-game slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. If you tuned in yesterday, hopefully you had a pretty good night. I definitely did. I went ahead and my primary build was stacking up the bottom of the Los Angeles Dodgers lineup and then throwing in the top of the San Diego Padres lineup. And Gavin Lux went out there and hit 2 bombs. And the only thing I did regret was not having a bunch of Will Myers because he wasn't really in my stacks, and he went out there and hit a grand slam and another home run. So a little bit of some positive and some bad. Still a great night for me. Hopefully a good night for you guys. But we're going to go ahead and move on to this slate. Before we do get into it, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you've been enjoying the content. If you're new, I guarantee if you stick around, you're going to like what you hear. I'm going to provide you with some good content, and I'm going to help you with your daily fantasy sports game, and specifically with MLB DFS as we move along breaking down these slates. I have released a multiple MLB packages actually over there on Patreon. I've released a DFS package where you'll get access to my pitcher data sheet, as you see on the screen behind me, my hot hitters StatCast data, my team hitting data, my bullpen data, my power rankings, and my cheat sheet, where I go ahead and give you the best plays of the slate. And my power rankings overall, the premier plays, no matter what they're priced, if they're mispriced and they're the top play, I'm going to go ahead and list them. And then the cheat sheet, I go ahead and I break it down by price tiers so you can fit in those elite bats, and you can figure out what you like for each price tier as well. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested. I got a bunch of other stuff linked in the description as well. Check out all the KJK DFS links. You can follow me over on Twitter at KJK_DFS. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate today. So as always, I'd like to go ahead and sort my sheet by K rate because it's fantasy sports. We get points for strikeouts. We want to target guys in our lineups that are going to get strikeouts against those high fantasy totals. And the first guy that stands out on my sheet today is that Yu Darvish. He comes in with a 30.9% K rate. Against righties, he's got a 36.1% K rate. And then against lefties, it's a 26.3. Darvish has just been absolutely elite this year. He's looking real good. And he gets to take on the Cincinnati Reds, who, in looking at the Vegas totals, there are no Vegas totals out yet, but one thing I can tell you that stands out right away is that it looks like there's going to be 13-mile-an-hour winds blowing in straight away from center, which if you tune into my videos, it's probably going to be repetitive, but if you're new, I want you to hear this. The wind in Wrigley is very important to pay attention to. It's the stadium in MLB that's most impacted by wind, so if the winds are blowing out, it's very significant, or if the winds are blowing in, it's very significant, and I mean very significant, especially when you're getting up over 10-mile-an-hour winds. So I can tell you right now that the Trevor Bauer and Yu Darvish in this game, while they would already be elite options, they're definitely going to be elite options because this weather is amazing for pitching. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down Trevor Bauer's numbers because he's definitely, these guys are definitely 1A and 1B. And Trevor Bauer has a 29.8% K rate, a 31.9% K rate against righties, and then a 27.5% K rate against lefties. And you can see just across the board, solid. Not a lot of red going on. The ground ball, the fly ball are a little bit underwhelming for an elite pitcher, but at the same time, we had just mentioned the wind. So even if the ball gets hit up in the air, we're not worried about it because it's going to die. It's going to die in that Wrigley wind today. So you really got to like both of these pitchers. Definitely 1A and 1B on today's slate. And when specifically breaking down their matchups, we can go ahead and open up my team hitting data sheet. Give you guys a little sneak peek of what I have to offer there. And the Cubbies have a 26.1% K rate. If we scroll down to the Reds, you can see that the Reds have a 23.4% K rate. And then, if we got into it and started breaking down splits against righties, the Reds do have a 24.1% K rate. Both facing right-handed pitchers, both elite pitchers, you definitely have to have interest in both of these guys today. Top pitchers of the slate, and they're priced like at 10.9 and 11.5K on DraftKings. They are priced up, but for good reason. And then you add in the weather, and it's just ridiculously good spots. I hate to ramble, but I think it's important to let you guys know that this is a unique scenario where you can feel extra confident because of this weather in Wrigley. And then third on our list is going to be a guy that's actually in a great matchup. These Pittsburgh Pirates have been striking out a ton, and Dane Dunning comes in, as a top prospect, and he's looked really good early on. He's got a 30.5% K rate overall, a 27.8% against righties, and if you're looking at the ground ball, the fly ball, the woba, the hard hit rate, and the slugging, it's all green across the board. Very impressive against righties so far. And then against lefties, the hard contact and the woba's up, but everything else is still looking real good. The fly ball, the ground ball, and the K rate's way up to 34.8%. So Dane Dunning has been flashing, why he's top prospect, flashing his talent, so to speak, showing off. And he does get a very good matchup taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he also gets a park upgrade going into Pittsburgh rather than having to pitch in Chicago, because Pittsburgh is a great pitching ballpark. So Dane Dunning, definitely a great option, and he's only 6.5K. So while we went over those two elite options at the top of the slate that are priced up, Dane Dunning is a great salary relief option. He's the first guy to be thrown in my lineups for salary relief, and I definitely have interest in him today. Moving further along, Clayton Kershaw is definitely a guy that you could target. This Arizona Diamondbacks team has been struggling as of late in a major way. He has a 25.8% K rate, a 26% K rate against righties, and then a 25.2% K rate against lefties. So Kershaw, he's a guy with a lot of name value. Everyone knows Clayton Kershaw. He's been around the league for a long time, and he comes in at a 10.5 price tag. So comparing him to, Trevor Bauer and Davies, he is a little bit cheaper, but he doesn't have that really win going on for him. So take that for what you will, but he does have a pretty good matchup in these Arizona Diamondbacks, who really haven't been making a lot of noise as of late. And I do think you could definitely play Kershaw. If for some reason you're building lineups and you get down to that last 400 or 500, so to speak, and you need to go down to Kershaw rather than a Bauer or a Davies to fit in that last bat that you really like, I do think that's valid, and I do think he's a guy that you could play on today's slate. And so then moving further along, on the cheap end, I had already mentioned Dane Dunning, and I do think that pitching is a little bit straightforward on the slate. I had already gone over it. Some of these spots are just tremendous, so it's almost like just jam them in if at all possible. But we do have to mention some salary relief to you guys. And when looking at who I would probably play first, it's tough because, we've went over all these great spots, and now it's kind of like they're decent, but not quite in the top tier with these other guys. I mean, we have to mention Jesus Lizardo. He's the best option besides the guys we haven't gone over as far as Sierra. His strikeout rate comes out at a 26% K rate. He's got a great swinging strike rate, a great ground ball and fly ball rate. Against righties, he does give up some hard contact, and he does have a walk issue, but the K rate's still there. And then against lefties, it's a 27.5% K rate, and he's green across the board. So, lefty-lefty matchups, he's dangerous. And he gets to take on a Houston Astros team today who, isn't the most ideal matchup. However, when looking at the Vegas lines, he actually does come in as a 175 favorite, which is always great to see. We like to target guys that are favored in by Vegas in these games. We get fantasy points for the win, and we do prefer for our pitcher to get a win if at all possible. So coming in as a 175 favorite, it's a pretty hefty favorite, and then I already showed you the stats. He can definitely back it up. The only problem is that the Houston Astros don't strike out a lot. So that's the dampen on the matchup. The numbers are there. Everything backs it up. He's in Oakland, which is a pretty good pitcher's park. The only thing is the wind is blowing out 11 miles an hour, it looks like, so you could factor that in. And then these Houston Astros just don't strike out. So that would kind of dampen the appeal as far as playing him. He is 8.3. He's a price tier down. If I'm building a lineup where I need a mid-tier pitcher, he's definitely solid. And I do have to promote him. And then lastly, I would say the last guy I can promote on the cheap end is up here in JT Brubaker taking on the Chicago White Sox. And he's not exactly, a crazy good pitcher, but he does come in with a 25 innings pitch sample size. The Sierra, the ERA, the K percentage are down. He has a 28.9% K rate against righties. And then against lefties, he's 21.2, and he's actually struggled against lefties. So we do prefer him in right-handed heavy lineups. And he is taking on the Chicago White Sox, who are very right-handed heavy. They do have multiple switch hitters in there, and Yohan Moncada and Yasmani Grandal. And then they have Nomar Mazara at the bottom of the order. But other than that, they're throwing out all righties, and I think that's a big reason to have interest in Brubaker. The only thing we'll have to keep an eye on is his pitch limitations, or his pitch count projection. I'll have to go back and look at what he's been throwing as of late and figure out, what these pitcher pilots are willing to give him for a leash. So something to keep an eye on there, a little bit of disclaimer, but I would say he's the next option we could throw out there for salary relief. And definitely a guy you could play for, on the cheap end. Because I have to mention those cheap guys too. I already mentioned the elite pitchers, they're in tremendous spots, so I would say to get them in if at all possible, but I do have to mention some salary relief, and he would be that guy. However, I would highly prioritize Dane Dunning over him, obviously, as we had gone over. So, yeah, that's a little breakdown of the pitching. Let's go ahead and start breaking down some bats that we're going to play today. And as always, I like to go ahead and sort my sheet by Sierra, skill, and our active ERA to figure out the worst guys on the slate in Sierra, and then go ahead and target them with our bats. So the first guy that stands out as being bad today is that Zach Davies. But Zach Davies is taking on Colorado, and I think we can go ahead and put an asterisk next to this one, as he does have a bad Sierra, but his ground ball and his fly ball stuff's very good against righties, and against lefties is just very bad. But as far as a full-on stack of Colorado today, they're a team that I greatly prefer to target when they're at home. When they're on the road, they struggle. The only thing I would say is you could definitely throw in those lefties. I had just mentioned the struggles against lefties. So maybe not a full stack, but maybe throwing in like a Tapia or a Charlie Blackmon as a one-off, and feeling really good about that because Davies definitely does struggle against left-handed hitting. But then again, if you want to be contrarian, I can see you go ahead and maybe a good idea is to go ahead and stack up the lefties. Daniel Murphy, Sam Hilliard, Tony Walters at the bottom of the order, and then as they like to call it, kind of a wraparound stack. Play those guys at the bottom and then play them at the top. So when they get on base, the top of the order comes up and hits them in. Definitely not a top play of mine, but an idea to throw out there to be contrarian if you're playing a bunch of lineups and tournaments. And then the second guy on the list to target is Antonio Centella. In the same exact game, taking on the San Diego Padres, comes in with a 51.5% ground ball rate and a 28% fly ball rate against righties. That's very good, but the slugging, the WOBA, and the hard hit rate are very bad. And then against lefties, it's kind of the same ordeal. Just not impressive numbers. Doesn't strike anyone out, and these San Diego Padres have been hot. So they're honestly a team that I seem to be playing every single night lately. It's getting kind of ridiculous. I just have interest in them every single night, and that doesn't change tonight because this is definitely a good matchup. I will say I don't think it's quite as good of a spot as last night, but we're talking about today's slate, and it's definitely a good spot. So at the top of the order, you got Trent Grisham. He crushes right-handed pitching. Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado, the main candidates. Mitch Moreland, ton of power against righties. Definitely have to have interest in him. Jake Cronenworth, same thing applies. And then you have Will Myers. He went off last night for those 2 home runs. And Austin Nola in the catcher spot. But Austin Nola's priced way up, so you're definitely going to pay for him, but he has been slugging as of late. He went deep last night. And he's a premier play in the middle of this lineup. So San Diego Padres, definitely a team that have interest today. And then moving further along to Julio Tehran taking on the Texas Rangers. Julio Tehran has red and orange across the board, and nothing good going on for him. He's got a 395 slugging against righties. And then against lefties, he has a 394 slugging, just consistently bad. The ground ball, the fly ball stuff's bad. The walk rate's bad. The K rate's bad. Julio Tehran is just not good. And when looking at the Texas Rangers lineup that he's taking on today, they do only have a 4.56 implied run total, but I do think that's mostly because their lineup isn't exactly the strongest lineup in the world, and I would definitely recommend targeting some power bats. Most notably, Joey Gallo and Ronald Guzman, and then you got Derek Dietrich at the bottom of this order. Those guys all crush, and taking on a guy that doesn't exactly strike anyone out, you can definitely take advantage. And then you got Shin-Soo Choo in the 3 spot. I would really like these lefties today. The lefties with the power against right-handed pitching. So you got Joey Gallo, Ronald Guzman, Derek Dietrich, and Shin-Soo Choo. They would be my premier options when I'm stacking up this team. And yeah, definitely can have interest in them. Moving further along for bats, Taylor Clark taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers is just really scary good. Once again, red and orange across the board. Nothing good going on for Taylor Clark. Against righties, he is very, very bad. He has a 525 slugging, a 343 WOBA. Terrible against righties. And then against lefties, it really doesn't get much better. He's a 473 slugging. It's just not good across the board. He is a guy that we love to target. And when he's taking on a Los Angeles Dodgers team that's just ridiculously stacked up and down, it is going to be scary good for these Dodgers. And yeah, these Dodgers are just in a great spot again. I had mentioned last night I had a lot of success stacking up the bottom of this order. And I wouldn't be surprised if I'm going right back to the well, because these guys at the bottom of the order are priced down, and you get exposure to a high implied run total, and you get guys at low ownership because people do not like to play guys at the bottom of the order. People do not like to play guys at the bottom of the order, so anytime, even if they're on the Dodgers, you're probably going to get them low owned. This is something that I try to preach to people. when playing MLB DFS, because you can get exposure to a high implied run total, play the guys at the bottom of the order, and you get the best of both worlds because these guys can mash and they might be low owned. So yeah, that's my little rant there. However, I will say you obviously do prefer the elite options in Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, Cody Bellinger, Max Muncy type of deal, AJ Pollock. And, as I mentioned, he really does struggle against right-handed hitting. So even the guys that don't really crush righties, such as an AJ Pollock, he's more known as a lefty masher. We could still go ahead and play him today because Taylor Clark is just bad. And the Diamondbacks bullpen isn't great. I was looking at my bullpen data sheet earlier. They don't grade out well either. So all about the Dodgers today. Get some Dodgers in your lineups at all costs. They are expensive, so those elite pitching options that we talked about, you might have to go with more of the cheap options that I talked about rather than those guys. But doesn't matter. Dodgers top priority today and an absolute great spot. And then moving further along, the next guy that we're probably going to want to target is, we'll go ahead and break down over here on my sheet, because we're kind of getting down to the nitty gritty here as far as being picky with our stacks. We've gone over the top options, but however, I will say Jorge Lopez is taking the mound, taking on the New York Mets for these Baltimore Orioles. And you look at his numbers, they're just not good across the board. The hard hit rate's bad, the K rate's bad, the swinging strike rate's bad, the ERA is terrible, worse on the slate at a 5.9. And he's just bad overall. The slugging against righties has been very bad. And then against lefties, it gets real bad because, the slugging is over 5, it's up at 519. Just not good. Jorge Lopez, definitely a guy you want to target today. And you want to target him with the middle of this order and the guys with the power. So when looking at the Mets lineup, they're projected to roll out, Nimmo, Conforto, JD Davis, Dominic Smith, Robinson Cano, Pete Alonso. I really have interest in every single one of these guys, especially the 1 through 6 range. And then the 7, 8, 9 you can definitely throw in, but I would prefer 1 through 6. So, you're talking Nimmo through Pete Alonso. And my favorite options would probably be the lefties. So Brandon Nimmo, Michael Conforto, Dominic Smith, and Robbie Cano. However, I say that they're my favorite options, and JD Davis and Pete Alonso are looking really good as well. So it is daily fantasy sports. We do have to play guys in certain positions, and we do have a salary cap. So, anyone in that range that you can fit in with your other stack that you're playing and positional-wise, I definitely like the New York Mets today. And, they're probably my second to last team to mention. I'm going to go ahead and mention one more stack to you guys before we get out of here. And the last stack I'm going to mention is going to be a sneaky one because it's in this last game. And, well, you know what? We're going to go ahead and call it a game stack because we have two bad pitchers in this game. Nick Margaevich. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Margaevich. He has a 4.83 Sierra, a 5.88 ERA, not good. His K rate, his swing strike rate's bad. His hard hit rate is terrible. He has a 455 slugging against righties, not good. And he has a 649 slugging against lefties, just bad across the board. Then we go ahead and we break down our friend Tyler Anderson here, who's taking on the Mariners in the same game. He's got a 4.54 Sierra, not good. The ground ball rate's terrible. The swinging strike rate is probably his best thing going on for him, but still has a 461 slugging given up to right-handed hitting and a 545 slugging given to lefties. So both of these pitchers are very bad. Both of these bullpens are bad. And the only thing that's not good about it is the ballpark itself is bad for hitting. San Francisco, not the best ballpark. However, I do think that we could go ahead and stack up this game and play anyone from each side. They're a little bit on the cheaper side. We could probably be contrarian, and we might be able to fit in some elite pitching because there's definitely some cheap options up and down these lineups. So, while not the most ideal conditions as far as the ballpark and the hitting conditions, it's only 65 degrees. I do think this is a contrarian spot you could target. And, as far as specific guys I would target in these lineups, it really probably would come down to salary. I mean, I hate to give you guys broad analysis, but that's probably the case. And I would say that I would side with Seattle because Seattle does have some guys that crush left-handed pitching. So, you got Dylan Moore, Kyle Lewis, Ty France, Evan White, and Phillip Ervin. All those guys do very well against lefties. And then you could throw in Luis Torrens as a salary relief option. So I would tend to side with the Mariners. And I would mention that they're also on the road, so no matter what the score is, they're going to get to go ahead and hit in the top of the ninth. If they're up 8-0, something that people don't think about in MLB DFS is when they're a home team, they're not going to get to hit again. But when they're the away team, they are going to get to hit again. And that's definitely a bonus. So I'm definitely siding with the Mariners. However, like I said, you could throw in some of these Giants as well, and I would throw in like a Slater, a Silvano. Yastrzemski has a ton of powers. You could throw him, but he is a left-handed bat. And Wilmer Flores is definitely my top option. He crushes left-handed pitching. He'd be my number one to get in there, get into Wilmer today. And then you got Darren Ruff and Joey Bart. So, those righties in the central part of the order would probably be my favorite targets. So a little bit of a contrarian spot there for you. Definitely not top options on the slate, but if we want to get in some elite pitching and play some contrarian bats, I do think that's a sneaky spot to look today in that last game. Because it's not ideal hitting conditions, and you can probably get those guys loaned and then get up to some elite pitching. So let's go ahead and give you guys a quick little overview of what I've gone over on today's slate. Both of these pitchers in this first game, I think you can look at for salary relief. Dane Dunning being the highly preferred one, and then JT Brubaker you could play as well. These New York Mets are in a great spot taking on Jorge Lopez. I would have interest in, these lefties, but as well as the righties in JD Davis and Pete Alonso, but I would prioritize the 1 through 6 range, Nimmo through Pete Alonso. This Texas Ranger squad, I do think you could play some one-offs. The guys with power, such as Shin-Soo Choo, Joey Gallo, Ronald Guzman, and Derek Dietrich. I think that could be a sneaky little snack for you that could pay off against Julio Tehran. Let's see. Trevor Bauer and Yu Darvish are both absolutely elite pitchers on the slate. The wind's blowing in at Wrigley, and they're good as is, so that's just like ridiculously good for them. Great spot. Then you have a 4.91 implied team total for the San Diego Padres. I definitely like the Padres today. Moving further along, I'd mentioned Jesus Lizardo as a pitching option in the mid-range. He would be my top option in the mid-range today. Clayton Kershaw as a pitching option. You could definitely have interest in him. And these Los Angeles Dodgers are in a ridiculously good spot taking on Taylor Clark, because Taylor Clark is not good at throwing baseballs past major league hitters. And the Los Angeles Dodgers lineup is absolutely stacked. So get those guys in your lineups today. And then this last game, I really do think is a sneaky spot for some bats. Both of these pitchers are very bad. Both of the lineups aren't the greatest, but especially the Seattle Mariners side, they do have guys that can crush left-handed pitching, and they're cheap. So definitely a sneaky stack for you to think about today. And you could go ahead and throw in these lefty matchers on the Giants as well, in a Wilmer Flores, Dan Ruff, Joey Bart, Evan Longoria type of the order. And then Austin Slater at the top of the lineup is also a great option, in Solano. So yeah, that is my overall breakdown of today's slate. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any new videos that I come out with. I do have to give you guys my home run call of the day. It's a segment that I started up a while back where I try to give you guys my home run call of the day. I try to mix in some elite bats as well as some more sneaky bats. And when looking at the guy that I think is going to go deep today, he's in a weaker lineup, but I had mentioned Julio Tehran doesn't strike anyone out. He doesn't miss any bats. And when that is the case and you're taking on a guy like Joey Gallo, who absolutely crushes baseballs, I do think that Joey Gallo is going to hit a home run today. He's my home run call of the day. He is in a little bit of a unique spot because a lot of times I find myself, picking a hitter in a stack that I really enjoy. But Joey Gallo may be more of a one-off today. However, with that being said, I really do like Joey Gallo today. And he is my home run call of the day. So that's what I'll sign off with today, guys. Please leave a like, hit the subscribe button, and go ahead and leave a comment of your favorite pick to hit a home run today. I want to get some feedback from you guys, and the more interaction that you get me on my channel, it'll help me out, and I appreciate the support greatly. So that's all from me. I wish you all the best of luck tonight, and have a good one.